which is funny because it's so valuable now. Like if someone said, "Hey, you actually have to pay to come to this meeting," I'd be like, "Great, I'll pay for it," because it's that valuable to me.
Welcome to the How Leaders Think podcast. I'm your host, Kenny Lange, and we are the show that transforms you by renewing your mind and giving you new ways to think. And with me today is Evan Gunter. He is the founder of Giveflow. It is a SaaS product, and it doesn't mean sassy, although he may be. He has been building companies and products for as long as he can remember. He's built over 20 failed companies, so he's got experience, and he's learned the most from those than any of his successful ones, like any great entrepreneur. Now he's focused on Giveflow, where they help churches harness their data into growing their giving ministry, which is deeply needed. He likes to describe himself as a solo founder, failing entrepreneur, Christian, husband, and dad. Welcome to the show, Evan.
Thanks for having me, man. That was quite the intro. That was solid.
Yeah. We could probably get you a clip of just that, and you could use that in some places.
Yeah, absolutely.
Free of
That's
charge.
cool, man.
Well, I'm excited that you're here. We've had a relationship going back to my days of running an agency and just messaging and emailing and everything. So I'm excited that we get to do something a little more collaborative to the world. They don't know about all the behind the scenes stuff. So tell me, Evan, what is on your mind?
Yeah, man. So I actually I did something that I don't recommend, but that I know that works for me. And what I did was is I booked a call with a customer about a feature that I didn't have yet, that I know that they needed, and I knew that was warranted. So I booked the call, pretty much time boxing myself to get it done. And that call is at the end of this call. So I have been scrambling to get this stuff done. And sometimes you just know yourself, you know what I mean? Like, I just got to put it out there, kick myself, make sure I'm doing it. So that's what's been on my mind for the last 24 to 48 hours is getting stuff done.
Awesome. I have done the same things to myself. I have to trick myself and create artificial. Well, I mean, this is a real deadline, but
Yeah.
you almost had to set a tripwire in order to get it done. So, is that something you've done before? Is this a first time occurrence or?
So it's definitely. I mean, it's definitely not a first time occurrence. If I was to be totally honest, I would definitely tell you I'm a huge procrastinator, which is an interesting, I guess, combination with someone who's also an entrepreneur, because doing stuff is really important to that. But the thing that I love about procrastination that people don't talk about enough is that, like, while you're procrastinating, yes, you're not really doing stuff, but you're thinking about how you're going to do it. Right? You're thinking about how
Right.
you're going to be implementing it for that entire time span that you're actually procrastinating. And then when you get down to do it, like, you already kind of have it mapped out how you want to get it done. At least that's the way I kind of find myself doing work sometimes. So I don't know. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, and it bears witness with my soul, because I will do the same thing. Oh, I got these little bubbles that pop up, so I bet my editor doesn't want to cut those out. But the idea of putting something on, like, it's almost was it like strategic negligence, to procrastinate. I will do that because I love. There's a part of me that loves having the pressure of having to, like, get it done, and, like, I did it at this high quality in less time than most people. Like, I don't know who it is in the world I'm competing with, but they're out there and I'm winning, or at
Funny.
least that's what I tell myself. But what's funny is I was listening to a podcast. It's a new one to me, but very popular. The Huberman Lab, and he's a
Yeah,
neuroscientist at
I'm familiar.
Stanford, and he had Adam Grant on, and they were talking about Adam's recent book, which I think is called Potential, or it's about potential. And they talk about procrastination, and there's precrastination, and then there's some other unique quality that Adam went into that was probably mind blowing. But within the thinking it through, I mean, does it help you to sort of compose in your head? Like I'll compare it to, say, the stories we hear about Mozart. Like Mozart would sort of compose all in his head and then write it all out. I mean, does that help you, as opposed to some people, they need to write obsessively, to get all the thoughts, to notate and everything? Is that something that's worked for you, or has this always been the case to where you need to kind of compose in your head?
Um, so I'll say I feel like I used to be a really big planner where, if I knew I had to get something done in the next 30 days, like great, let's start now. Let's start putting together some stuff
Yeah.
now. Um, and that's probably the safer way to go about it. But as you get more busy, you just I don't know, you just start to put stuff off, and you start to prioritize things in your head. And even though I know this is like a top priority, I also have other things going on that I'm trying to knock out too. And like I know this needs to get done. Like, so great, I'm gonna put a hard date. And what's that? I think this I'm not gonna say it helped me, but it definitely made me realize what I was doing. Is there's an actual it's like a theory or a law that says, time will expand to the date that you
Yeah,
set,
Parkinson's
right?
law.
That
Time,
yeah, there you
work
go.
will expand to fill the time allotted. So if you give it
Yeah,
30
yeah.
minutes, it'll take 30, but if you give it 2 hours, it'll somehow take you 2 hours to do the same thing.
Exactly, exactly. And I feel like there's so many things that I do that a lot of times could be done in 30 minutes or an hour.
Mhm.
But sometimes I'll set like these later dates and it'll just take forever and it'll just drag out. And especially in what I do, because I do what I would consider a lot of deep work sometimes, where it takes time to
Mhm.
get ramped into the thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
And then once you get pulled out, like it takes more, like you can't just jump right back in. So, um, yeah, I don't know, man. You just been doing it long enough. You kind of figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So that's been working for me. I guess I'll keep doing it. Sometimes you just kind of need a kick in the butt. So we did it.
Yeah. I need several kicks. Something that, to that end, that I've been following this guy, Alex Hermosi, and he's, talks about productivity, business, marketing, all these different
He's
things.
the marketer, I think.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I bought one of these timers.
Okay.
And I threw the box away. Otherwise, I'll find the link and I'll put it in the show notes. Is, I don't know, like 10, $12, but you can just, like, I can hit the mic, but I can just rotate it and then hit, and then it starts counting down. But he talked about how he would procrastinate, or he would do certain things, and he's like, I don't think it should take this long. He's like, I'm going to set a time limit. And he would set the timer and say, all right, I can't do anything else other than this one thing, which I think speaks back to the term you just used, which is deep work. And I'm curious if um, you've come across Cal Newport's work, which is called deep work. And he talks
I have
about, like,
not.
yeah, and there's all these studies around. I definitely would recommend it. It's a phenomenal read. But he talks about how, in order to, exactly what you said, of, I've got to ramp into a way of thinking, like, connect these dots, these dots, these dots, and it forms the basis of the work I'm going to be doing. And then allows you to keep moving through it. Whereas when we have these
Yep.
frequent interruptions, our brain can't fully get into a state of flow in order to do some really cool things. So we're always staying at the shallow end of the pool, so to speak.
Yeah,
Um,
and I would say because I'm a solo founder, like I have a lot of interrupts during my day, right? I'm sure you do too. So being able to
they're called
dedicate
children.
time. Yeah. Children, support emails, phone calls. Yeah, it's a bunch of stuff. So
What As you've been doing this for a while, in your bio, so you've had 20 failed companies, experiments, right? That
Yeah,
that
man.
have led to you learning a lot. Um, and obviously, you're someone who reads. You're looking at what are other smart people doing, to keep building into your successes. But what sort of experiments were you running, or things were you doing before you figured out, hey, I really need to be able to find a way to get into the deep work in order to make things that succeed, right? Like, what were some of those lessons from those failures that taught you, like, how
Yeah.
maybe this method, I had the right idea, but the wrong method and approach for it?
Yeah, man. Man, there's quite a few. I feel like I could write a book or do something
Probably should.
on all the learnings of these fail. I will say I one of my biggest regrets, and not that I'm super old, but I'm also not, super young anymore either. I'm in my early 30s. But if I had to like rewind and go back into my early 20s, I wish I would have found a mentor that could
Mm,
have saved me tons and tons of time. Because I feel like I made a lot of like all of the classic mistakes that early founders make. Like, oh, we're gonna disrupt this entire market and we're gonna be the first to market, and this product is gonna be awesome. And I did a lot of that, man. And it took me a while, way too long in hindsight
hmm.
to realize, hey, Evan, like you don't want to be first to market. Like then you got to educate your customers. And then once you educate them, then you got to let them
Yeah.
know that, hey, this is a problem. And then you got to sell them the solution to the problem. Like, and it's just a bunch of stuff. I
Right.
feel like if I would have had somebody early on, I feel the same way with my golf game, right? I wish I would have taken lessons at the beginning. It would have saved me a ton of time down the road. So
You didn't
honestly,
just
that's probably
watch
one of
Happy Gilmore and say, "Well, this is enough lessons for me."
well, yeah, I probably did watch Happy Gilmore, and that's what caused all the problems, right? So I was like, oh yeah, this is how you get power. You get a running start.
Yeah, exactly. I tried that once on a golf course. I'm not a golfer at all. I get too bored. Standing.
Everyone
I need
tries
to
it
keep
once.
moving. Yeah,
Everyone
you got to
tries it
try it.
once.
I'm more of a putt guy. So I
Yeah,
need distractions like a windmill or a clown with whatever. But
yeah.
it's interesting that you mentioned that. One of my coaches and mentors, that is he's recent. He's a co-founder of System and Soul, which is the framework I use. But something
Hmm.
I've heard him say for a while is the three things that all the successful people that he's coached and come across in his decade and a half of just being a coach, and he's a multi-time entrepreneur, was they had a coach or a mentor, a peer group, and some sort of framework or model that guided their decision making and growth and things like that. They weren't just sort of like making it up as they go, which all of us entrepreneurs are given to, right? We want to build the ship while we're
Yeah.
sailing it, because who has time to wait?
It's yeah, man. It's so funny. Again, back in my early 20s, I didn't want advice from anyone. I wanted to do it myself. I was very prideful.
Yeah.
Um, and now I'm just like the total opposite. Like, give me everything. Like, tell me, like, what
Yeah.
have you learned? Like, tell me more. Tell me more. Uh, it's
What
funny.
what in thinking about your own thinking, right? So sort of the pay attention to what you pay attention to in your 20s, and I'm sure you've come across other you maybe were around other entrepreneurial type people at that age as well, and probably still come across them today. What is the thinking behind, what, I'll figure it out, or I know better, or what is that unproductive prevailing wisdom that you think keeps so many of us blinded to the value of a mentor and deep work and things like that?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, for me, and I'm definitely still this way, but I had a lot of pride back then. Like I really wanted to accomplish things myself.
Hmm.
More so that when I reached the finish line, like I could say I did it with no help.
Gotcha.
Which which just seems like super childish in hindsight, like looking back, like
Right.
why would
Right.
you ever think that way? But I did. I didn't want help from anyone. So
What do you think drove that?
I I don't know, man. We could be getting into some deep conversations about
It's
my
free
child. I
therapy.
don't know. It could absolutely be free therapy. Yeah, man. I don't know. I really don't. Because I mean, I come from a great I'm come from a great loving family. Like, love my parents, love my
Hmm.
sister. There's nothing there that drove that. I mean, I think maybe super quick side note, kind of related. My dad grew up. He grew up super poor in the projects,
Mm.
and got out.
Okay.
Grew up with seven brothers and sisters. Lived
Wow.
on food stamps. So I don't know. Maybe there's something there. Hearing the stories that he told me growing up, like wanting to be a fighter. So
Mm.
yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's just that's just the way I am. I mean, I still have a lot of that today, but it's totally different. If I run across somebody that has experience, and even if they don't have experience, like I want to listen to you. I want to hear what you have to say.
Right. Right.
Because just because I'm listening doesn't mean I have to follow what you're saying. But uh,
Right. That could be
yeah,
its own podcast.
it
I
could,
don't have to
yeah,
follow it just because you gave me
yeah,
advice.
yeah,
Um, the no, I'm always curious about that because I've done a lot of reflection myself because I was very, very similar. And you and I've talked outside of this a little bit about that mentality and some personality types, and we can go into the Enneagram and all of those things. But
yeah.
I think I had a chip on my shoulder because of just growing up dealing with being bullied and some of those things. It was sort of a like I'll show you.
Mm,
Um, and instead of it just like dealing with the issues of like a poor relationship with one person, it was I'm now taking on the world,
yeah,
which that mentality can still jump all over me. I try to use it for good now,
yeah,
and maybe fight against real evils in the world, not imaginary bullies. But it really did come from I'm smart. Like I'm grateful for the brain God gave me, um, but I would overcompensate by like being over intellectual and trying to dominate and figure things out. And like, you know what? I would rather just figure it out on my own because, for whatever reason, I imagined all these other people who try to give me wisdom, my parents included, like, hey, you just don't really know. Like, you're just not quite as bright.
yeah,
I'll navigate this much differently. And life has a beautiful way of showing you how dumb you are,
yeah.
and where those deficiencies lie, and it won't force you to grow up, but it definitely gives you the opportunity. I think I would say. Well, fast forwarding, like as you went through that and had your different interactions, was there a catalyzing moment where your thinking started to shift and you started to say, you know what, I've been doing it this way and I'm not quite getting the results I'm wanting? And they may not have been bad results, but maybe weren't meeting your expectations. And he said, I need to change the way I'm thinking here. Was there a particular moment or set of circumstances that led you to try something different to maybe more aligned with where you are today?
I don't know if there was something in particular. It was probably a combination of a lot of those failures, but I think just kind of being very very blunt about it. It was, hey, solve a problem people actually want solved.
Hmm.
I feel like a lot of my early stuff, like, a lot of these things that I was putting out was cool. Like they were cool things and they worked, but a lot of times people didn't need them solved. Like the problem that I was solving wasn't something people were interested in.
Right.
And if they were interested in it, they weren't willing to pay me for it. Right. So, uh, so,
It's a key
so
component in a business.
yeah, it is a key component. If you're an entrepreneur, you have to get paid at some point. So I think when I got my first quote unquote hit or something that actually paid me, I kind of was able to see what that actually looks like, and you just kind of
Mhm.
combine everything that you've learned before that, and it just kind of snowballs, and you just kind of can figure it out a little bit better. So maybe not one particular instance, definitely a combination of things, but
Mhm.
I definitely remember when someone handed me my first dollar, like, "Hey, I built this," and someone gave me that first dollar. I was like, "Oh man, this is great. This is fantastic."
Yeah.
So
It's like it's like a drug.
yeah,
When you
yeah,
realize that you can do that and it doesn't have to come in the form of being a W-2 employee. Not that there's
yeah,
anything wrong with that, but for those of us that feel that itch to make something, explore something. I was literally this morning was on a call with a new contact. I got an introduction, and this person works on social media for nonprofits, and she was asking me about my background with my agency, and I was telling her my whole story, and I told her, it's like, I got let go from this one agency after 3 months. They were more of a traditional agency. I wanted to be more like digital marketing future, and this is back in 2015. And I remember this one person calling. It was a law office, called, wanted a website, and the standard price that I was told to quote is, they start at $5,000 and go up, which I thought was insane for a website. I know better now, but I thought it was insane. And not long after that, unfortunately, I was let go, and I started thinking about my options. Like, you know what? I'm nerdy enough. I can build a website. I called that office back and said, "Hey, now I spun it. You can call me a liar, but I did spun it." And I said, "I've decided to go out on my own. And I
yeah.
think I can cut out a lot of the overhead costs and pass those savings on to you. What do
Love
you think
that.
about a website for 1250?" And they said, "Let us talk about it." Got back to me like a day later and said, "Yeah, let's do it." And I was like, "What? Like,
Love
someone's
that.
gonna pay me to do this?" And from then on, I was hooked. And then fast forward 5 years later, I'm selling that agency and so forth. But I definitely resonate with, when you figure out people need a thing, you can do a thing, and you can make a living. Charge money first, and then figure out how to make a living at it.
Yeah.
It really is quite addictive. What So it's one thing to get started, right? Like, there's I forget how many businesses. There's probably a million something businesses are started every year. Most of those shut their doors in the first 12 to 18 months, and probably 80 to 90% never see year 5, right?
Yeah.
Um so it's one thing to start. That definitely takes courage, but I think it takes, maybe more wisdom and humility to keep going. What has helped you, because you've been on a path, and I just forgot the name of the migration product that first introduced
Yeah.
you to me. But you started there, you've moved on to Giveflow. But what have you seen be key to keeping something going, right? Not just have a bright idea and sell a little bit of something, but now you're making a living at this.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me was talking to your customer base as much as possible.
Hmm.
Because when I talk to them, even just like chatting them up in a setting like this, you learn about their problems, you
Mm-hmm.
learn what's taking time out of their day, you learn about their frustrations. If they're using your current product, you learn how to make your product better. Really, I think that's probably a big key, especially early on. Like even with Giveflow, it's coming up on 2 years old, and I would
Wow.
still consider it like a pretty new product where I'm still
Mm-hmm.
talking to customers, trying to figure out what's working for them, what's not working for them to try to make the product better. So,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely just talking to people, I think is a big key. And not that I'm successful by any means, but
Mm-hmm.
if there was some sort of gauge and we were to say, hey, how do you get here? To like talking to cut like if with you can't do it without talking to your customers.
Yeah.
So
I think It may have been David Cancel who founded Drift, which is live chat CRM. They've gone on
The
to do some
chat
other
widget. Yeah.
cool. Yeah. It may have been him, and if I'm misattributing, I'm sorry to whoever really said this, but it was whoever gets closest to the customer wins.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily the
Yeah.
best marketer, the best salesperson, the person with the most VC funding, or the longest runway, but it was whoever gets closest to the customer is going to win in the marketplace. And it both just win against your own, standards of excellence or goals, but also when there are other competing products, right? Because we're in a capitalistic market, right? So competition built is part of it. Has there been anything other than talking to customers? You mentioned early on wishing you had mentors. Is that something you've gone back and you've tried to find other people, even if it's not a formal relationship, but try to find people who maybe are a few steps ahead and ask them questions, or at least you have the, hey, if you ever need anything, you can call me sort of relationship?
Yeah, I mean, so I have a mentor now, someone that I meet with, but maybe not as regularly as I would like, but at least
I hope they're
once
listening.
every I would say at least once a quarter on the slow, on the slow rate, maybe once every couple months. But then I also have a what I would refer to as a mastermind of a group
Hmm.
of folks that other solo entrepreneurs, actually some of them have grown. They have a few employees now, but very similar company size. In the SaaS space, that we get on a phone call every other week and just get on and kind of chat about what we're dealing with, what we're working
Mm-hmm.
through. Really just kind of, as this founder roundtable to kind of bounce stuff off each other, which is really nice.
Yeah.
Something that I probably wouldn't have been open to a long time ago. So, which is funny because it's so valuable now. Like if someone said, "Hey, you actually have to pay to come to this meeting," I'd be like, "Great, I'll pay for it," because it's that valuable to me. So,
Yeah.
uh,
That's fantastic. I've recently in the last year started participating in some groups. Some are maybe feel a little bit more networking. Others are for like Christ-centered executives and things like that. To where, hey, can we commiserate a little bit, but also go and there's a mix. Like I might have some wisdom or knowledge or experience on something that helps somebody else, and the next week that or next call or meeting that they have something for me, um, which is something I was really against. Right, I was against needing anybody. Again, there's a whole series that we could do on that, and I should probably invite my therapist on to articulate it better than me. But um, so,
that's funny.
what are you? What sort of on your mind as you're looking ahead for the future of Giveflow and just your evolution as a founder, as an entrepreneur? Um, what sort of ways of thinking are you looking to evolve or iterate on that can sort of take you, like what got you here won't get you there? Is there anything that you're looking ahead, you're like, hey, I think I need to, if I want to get to this place, these are some things that I might need to tweak or iterate on?
Yeah, I mean, so just in the context of the business and as it grows, to be honest, like I'm trying to figure out how much growth I want, right?
Hmm.
Because being a solo founder has a lot of perks. It's got a lot of downside too.
Sure.
I like interacting with people. I like jumping on, this conversation with you. Like this is nice, talking to people.
I'm gonna put
But at
that in
the
my
same
testimonial
time,
section.
but at the same time, and I think I may have told this to you before, is when you start adding people and you just get bigger, just like other stuff comes into play that I'm not a huge fan of, like these politics and
Hmm.
just a variety of different stuff. And I'm not saying I would ever be there in the next year or so, but you have to kind of start thinking about, hey, um, I like using this analogy. I think in a perfect world, I would come to work with my band. Like there would be
Hmm.
a lead singer and a drummer and a lead guitarist and maybe a bassist, and there would be like four of us, and we would just come in, and everyone would kind of know what their role is, know what they're
Mm-hmm.
doing. It feels like a really good team size. Now, when I think about that and I say, hey, this is where I want to be. Okay, well now I have to think about hiring people, or bringing other folks on board, which is a whole new thing. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
very good generalist, which makes me a really good entrepreneur. Like, I do a lot of
Right.
things okay,
Right.
not super great, but now, like, okay, if I'm gonna grow and I'm gonna hire somebody, who do I hire for? Do I hire a lead guitarist, like somebody that is,
Mm-hmm.
also a little bit of a generalist, like can do a few different things, maybe can play drums if I need them to,
Yeah.
maybe can sing. They're not a great singer, but they can if you need them to.
Backup vocals. Yeah.
Yeah, backup vocals, or do I say, "Hey, no, like, hey, my a lot of my time right now is being spent on support tickets, and it's very easy to hire for somebody that can just handle support." So,
Yeah.
um, I'm definitely trying to think around some of that stuff.
I know somebody who could help you figure that out.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. We can talk offline about that though. Um,
Yeah, man.
but I mean, that is, I mean, that's always a major consideration once you start to reach certain stages and you figure out what's my highest and best use of time as a owner, founder, CEO, like whatever title you want to use. Um, and where can is it actually cheaper to pay somebody than to use my own time there. But those inflection points always come with a lot of consideration, right?
Yeah.
So as someone is thinking of this, and maybe they're a little entrepreneurial, maybe they're an intrapreneur, and they're inside of an organization, but they're trying to make this progress that you've described of, like, I'm going out, I'm seeking wisdom, trying to grow, listen. Um, if somebody wanted to evolve their thinking similar to what you have, what's maybe a baby step in the next 24 hours that they could take, that would get them on that path?
Um, yeah, I don't know if this is a great answer, but, I'm gonna say, just doing something. Whether that's right or wrong, like, just do something.
Yeah.
Just put your foot down and do something. It might be terrible, but I promise, like, you're gonna learn a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and you're gonna kinda develop that thinking along the way. I can't tell you how many times, even in Giveflow, or some of my other products, where I've just done something like, hey, I talked to a few people, I think this is a good idea. And then you do something, you're like, hey, like, we like the idea, but actually the way you've implemented is terrible. But then that generates feedback, but I just did something.
Right.
I put something out. I didn't think about it a ton, which is almost, maybe, the polar opposite of this podcast is, don't think, just do it. Just do it, and then you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So,
Spoken like a true entrepreneur. Just just
yeah.
just do a thing. If you fail, so what?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, no, I'm a huge fan of that. Is what I hear you saying is whatever that thing is that maybe they've been thinking about or trying or experimenting with, is stop overthinking it and just do something to get it going, and let the feedback and the experience be that teacher, as opposed to trying to work out all the details before you take your first step on it.
Yeah, man, 'cause, a lot of times I can spend a bunch of time thinking around something. And again, hear me say, this isn't like, hey, always just do something instead of thinking. Like, that's not, no, that's not always, a
Sure.
lot of times you do need to think around a decision, or think around the way you're gonna implement something. But, um, maybe in a little bit of an entrepreneurial context, I would say just doing something is so much more valuable than spending a bunch of hours
Hmm.
thinking about how you're gonna do it. Um,
Right. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. I don't think I hear you saying that, like, go do some big thing. Like, it could just be, in your context, it could be, let's test a feature. We could write that up, put it in there, see what people think, beta test it, whatever it may be. And it may even just be try something out to a small sample of folks, right?
Yeah,
Was it a non-fatal failure is a way to go, or move fast and break things, if you want to quote Zuck. I think that was him that said that.
yeah. Well, fail fast, fail hard. Some I don't know. They say that too.
Yeah.
If I am if I am building a feature, or if I'm implementing something, I'm definitely not doing any of that without talking to my customers first. Like again, the
Yeah.
last thing I want to do is build something no one needs, right? Or no
Right.
one wants.
Yeah.
Which again, if I go back to those 20 failed companies, I did a lot of that. So I'm always talking to somebody. But once
Yeah.
I figure out like, hey, this is a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Like let's go ahead and put something out and see if it works or if it saves someone some time, and then we can kind of tweak it along the way. Um, I mean, I think you talked about you mentioned one of my earlier products that we got acquainted through each other
Mm-hmm.
with was a migration tool, and man, like the first version of that thing was so bad. It was so bad. But it saved people time, like
Yeah.
they were willing to jump through the hoops because it was less hoops than what they were jumping through before.
Right.
Um,
One was greater than zero.
yeah, and it was terrible, but I put something out there, got feedback, talked to people, and then just kind of reiterated stuff. So yeah, man, just do something.
Jump out and do it. Well, Evan, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to have you on again in the future. To all the listeners, if you got value from this or any of the other episodes, I certainly appreciate a subscribe, like, share, all those things. We want to help as many leaders and thinkers as we possibly can. But until next time, remember, change the way you think, you'll change the way you lead. We'll see you.